All right, here we go. You guys asked for it. You wanted Foley Fatukasi. You wanted Tim Settle. You wanted Feldarius Payne. All these defensive linemen. They were not the marquee signings of Daniil Hunter and Danico Autry. I've gone and we did Foley Fatukasi yesterday. Going to do some Tim Settle today. And I'm going to open up with some highlights of him. But a disclaimer in advance. These are highlights from 2020. He had a year in which he had 5 sacks, 5 tackles for a loss. Really productive year for a guy that hasn't had a whole bunch of production in his time in the NFL. He's had 9 sacks in 6 seasons. He really hasn't started that many games. Texans signed him to a very reasonable deal of 2 years, $6 million. He's going to be competing for time. But that one magical season under a Washington football team, that's what they were called at the time, Washington football team in the COVID year in front of no fans at all, Tim Settle put together some pretty impressive highlights. So I'm going to, with the disclaimer that this is not how he is every year, here's Tim Settle from 2020. A minute of highlights for you. He's a 350-pounder, 315-pounder, excuse me. But you're going to see him show a lot of mobility. Really good ability in this reel to shed, use his hands violently. Some good lateral movement there. Left defensive tackle. This one, he just wreaks havoc, gets upfield, like stops the play, the run, ends up on a little bit of misdirection, just blowing everything up in the backfield. He's got the swarm factor. That is one thing that I noticed, especially compared to some of the other big guys in Buffalo last year. He might not have been as good as the starters, but for a big guy, he moves, goes, chases to the sideline, does all that stuff. Look at the hands there. And really good understanding of the flow on zone plays, when to shed, when to hold your gap. So if I'm the Houston Texans and I'm watching this, I'm thinking, okay, what's happened in the last couple of years that you haven't been able to quite have the same production? I don't think he's moving as athletically, at least the film I watched, and it's not like I've gone back and watched every single one of his games, but this looks a little bit different athletically than what I saw from him in Buffalo. So very intrigued. I'm intrigued by his upside. He calls himself intriguing later. We'll show a little bit of the personality. Let's see. Audio working. Seth, quick question. How are things looking? Do you still feel about a JJ return? We'll get to that later. More impressive on film than Fatukasi. I think the upside in terms of him getting into the backfield and providing push in the pass rush, not expecting him to win every pass rush down, but I think there is that. You guys let me know, as always, if there are any kinds of audio issues, as there tend to be. Thank you, Rick. I appreciate you as well. Rick, one-time detractor of mine. Wasn't a big fan of mine, but then I won him over somehow. I don't know what I did. Just outright bribes for the most part. So when we look at Tim Settle, and we'll go through a couple of the more run stuffy types of plays. I've got a couple of short yardage stands that he was in on at Buffalo, and then I've just got a smattering of plays from the Jags game last year. Chosen just in sequence without trying to highlight or lowlight anything. But more than anything, the way the defensive line is composed right now, as D'Amico talked about, you want to be able to have a bunch of guys that rotate in. You want to have versatility. I'd put them into 3 categories right now. The guys who are more run stuffers than anything and probably aren't going to be down in there on 2nd and long or 3rd and long. Foley Fatukasi, who we talked about yesterday. McTelvin again. Khalil Davis. I bring up McTelvin again first because Nick Caserio has brought him up on his own, unprompted, when he was on with Payne and Pendergast. I'll probably do him tomorrow because a lot of you have requested him. So I'll say that with a grain of salt. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to feel about him. Kurt Heinisch and Khalil Davis, those are the guys who are your run-stuffing, big, stodgy defensive tackles. Your Seth Payne types, if you will. Formerly, not now. I'd get destroyed versus the run right now. The guys who can do it both, who can play inside and can play defensive end, Danico Autry, Mario Edwards, Dylan Horton. I know I got to do Mario Edwards here at some point, but those guys are, whether you're Charles Omenihu type that can go outside or inside, they have that versatility and more likely to be used on passing downs than heavy run downs. And then you've got Feldarius Payne and Marcus Harris. who I think I called Marcus Smart yesterday. I retract my ding that I gave myself as a reward for not messing up any names. Feldarius Payne and Marcus Harris. If you want to look at exactly what you hope he gives you in Tim Settle Jr. on rundowns, so you can get a look at his face and see his pleasant personality. Lots of personality on this guy. I'm going to show you two things. One will be a little personality interview he did with the Buffalo Bills in-house media. He talks about Stephon Diggs in there. And then also, he does have several tracks on Spotify, and they're not bad. I feel like the auto-tune usage wasn't as heavy as I expected. So I tried to buy the rights, but I couldn't find them on YouTube or anywhere else. So I'll bootleg it, and I'm going to run it for 29 seconds, and hopefully he doesn't sue me for it. But this is Tim Settle Jr. talking about a critical play in the Bills versus Browns game in November of 2022. This was the game, remember, that had to be rescheduled and moved to Cleveland because of a blizzard that came through. 58,000 Bills fans still showed up. It was pretty impressive. Here he is talking about it, and then I'll show you.
He was telling us that short yardage and the quarterback sneak, they're like 80% plus, and we knew they was going to run it. I just knew that they was going to try to do something like that, and me and Phil got in there and got strong, and that's what it was. We knew that they were going to try us. Teams have in the past, and we were ready for it.
So you look at these, as I told you yesterday with the Foley Fatukasi, run-stuffing defensive tackles don't always have the most magnificent highlights, and there's nothing necessarily magnificent about this, but in terms of body type, size, 315 pounds, however he's listed, he looks bigger than that, and maybe that's one reason. Perhaps his body weight was a little bit different in that 2020 highlight reel, but here, for what you need, the body weight is everything. So right defensive tackle, just stands up, doesn't look like anything spectacular, right? But they stuffed the QB sneak. I think that was Jacoby Brissett at the time. Very next play, they tried to do it again. This is probably one of the things that Browns fans hated about Kevin Stefanski this year. 3 technique, he's going to slant inside. And this is tough when the offensive linemen are firing out and you're asked to slant inside. Like, I could claim that he should be a little bit lower in his stance there, but he's got to get to where he's supposed to be going. And meanwhile, you look at that offensive guard, that guy is just going out hell-bent for leather straight ahead. Go die, offensive guard. So it does a good job of just sacrificing his body for the cause there. I like a lot of things about him. If I'm going to go, this might take a second for me to set up because I was scrambling to get this done. I'm going to bring up just that sequence of about 1 minute of plays from last year versus the Jaguars. If you're new to the live stream, you're going to be extra disappointed in me because this is not the right one. Now, is it? Hold on a minute. I can't leave you guys out to dry, hang you guys out to dry like this. I promised boring run stuffing highlights, and damn it, that's what I'll do. All right, this was the issue. So fire off some questions, and I'll answer some questions while this is slowly going to airdrop to my computer. If you're watching this in the recording, I would say just fast forward. Go ahead and fast forward at about, I'd say 30 seconds. Go ahead and fast forward 30 seconds to maybe to 1 minute. I'd love to see Dylan Horton come in and run as a DT, but I feel he'll be the first backup for the edge. Yeah, I don't think Dylan Horton. He's a tough one to figure out because remember he was a high school safety who started off in college as an outside linebacker, transferred, moved down to defensive end, but it was more of like an outside linebacker type of defensive end. And then his final year in college, he ended up playing with his hand in the dirt, and he also gained like 50 pounds along the way. So I don't know if he's going to be big enough, and obviously he's gone through cancer treatment. So I would be surprised if they use him as like a first down defensive tackle. I think he's more of a utility guy that can be used both ways. One more question while this loads. Audio is fine. Excellent, excellent. You finally caught a Seth Payne live. Awesome. What up, Seth? Settle is a run stopper. Got to have an interior pocket collapser. Right. And that gets to, you know, you can be a run collapser as an interior run defender. And I think Settle probably does a better job of that on average than Foley Fatukasi. They had similar number of QB pressures last year. As an interior guy, some of that just comes down to how is everybody else around you. All right, here we go. Oh, you son of a bitch. Hold on. Why it's so slow today. All right, you know, we're going to move to the next thing while I wait for that to download, I'm just going to go ahead and move to Tim Settle. This is feel-good human emotion stuff. Tim Settle getting interviewed by Buffalo in-house media.
3 words to describe Tim Settle.
3 words, handsome, one of a kind. That was the one, I had to put that as one word. I'm intriguing.
Yeah. Handsome, one of a kind, intriguing. You're going to love his personality. I just don't know how often you're going to hear from him because, like I said, he's started just a smattering of games in his NFL career. And in 6 years, he's not been a go-to guy. I think he's going to be used situationally. Khalil Davis is a guy that's been used situationally a lot. Kurt Heinisch, that's the competition. That's like the unglorious competition that we're going to see with these guys this year. As far as his experience with one Stefon Diggs, the deep and heavy football stuff here, Tim Settle on Stefon Diggs.
Who's got the best drip on the team?
I like Steph. Steph, he makes me want to throw something on a Tuesday. He be throwing a little fit on every day. I'm like, having a little bag with it and everything. So,
Okay.
I mean,
The little bag. That's what I'm missing. We're gonna get to Tim Settle, the recording artist, in a minute. The little bag. That's what I'm missing in my fashion repertoire. Someday people will take me seriously if I have the little bag. I don't need a broadcast intro. I hate broadcast intros. I like to get right into it. And I tried to fix the audio here for a minute. If I had recorded this would be like a 6-minute video if I didn't have to deal with all of these damn insufficiencies of my producer, Seth Payne. Let's play the music while we wait for the film to download. This is not as bad as I thought it would be. This is Tim Settle. He's known as It's Tim with a Z. It's with a Z, Tim. You can download him on Spotify. If you do, send him a message on social media crediting me for skyrocketing his recording career.
I'm tired of everything. I'm tired of the hating, I'm tired of the faking. I ran up a back from the ground on the pavement. I do what I do, I ain't making no statement. Rated high, still feeling the rated. Made it far, I ain't far as I want. Did a lot, but this shit just begun. Paid a lot, still getting no funds. My people so proud of me. We was just shopping at Dollar Tree. Now we live it up, hit the lottery. We ain't spoke on no why, don't bother me. It was time to eat, ate a meal. While eating that meal, made a meal. If you bet on me, play the field. Independent, I don't need no deal. Started from the back, yeah, ran it back. Spent the back.
Yeah. I don't know. He doesn't sound like he's tired of everything there. I feel like I thought that was not bad, right? I think by like athlete standards, if you were a more famous athlete, if you were a sleek edge rusher, if you were Danielle Hunter or something, and he could spit bars like that, that was pretty good, right? You guys tell me. I don't know. I'm not a rap expert. We did used to do a segment on the midday show called where I would interpret rap lyrics. Son of a bitch. All right, here we go. We're going to see if this works. No. That's not it. All right, I'm just taking questions from here on out. Tim Settle, I'm intrigued by his upside from those highlights from 2020. If you missed the beginning, as soon as we're done, go back to the beginning. I'll show you his best year he's had as a pro. He kind of just surpassed a lot of his career numbers. 5 sacks, 5 tackles for a loss. It was the best year he's had. It was in a Jack Del Rio defense. I think that he may have been moving a little bit differently back then, and I don't know if he's been injured or if it's a body weight thing or whatever it might be, because he's a big guy. But he'll show up this year. He'll be on the team, I think. but he's you can make my intro. Yeah. That's Tim Settle in a nutshell. I wish I could give you something more glorious or like higher expectations. I think he's a hell of a kid. I think he's going to play his ass off. I think he's got the swarm mentality. But I think largely he's a run stuffer that they'll use either situationally or on early downs. I wouldn't expect him to be all of a sudden an all-pro or something. But they do have, if you look at that roster right now, they've got a few small guys that can be zippy and upfield. They've got a few mid-sized guys that can be your utility players. If you got to go out there and nickel but try to stop the run, we've got guys for that. And then you've got a slew of like big run-stuffing defensive tackles who can be rotational players. It's not the same as having Eric Armstead, but it's something. It's something. I'll try one last time to see if it's a little ironic that Houston's biggest threat is the run game on both sides of the ball. And, and they weren't bad against the run last year. By way of comparison, so last year, Tim Settle had 14 pressures. Malik Collins had 45 QB pressures. Sheldon Rankins had 40. So just to show you that he's not one of the guys that's come in to replace Sheldon Rankins or Malik Collins on the pass rush side of things. That's going to be Danico Autry. That's going to be Mario Edwards. That's those sleeker guys, perhaps a Dylan Horton, depending on how he feels and recovers from cancer treatment. Tim Settle, I'm looking at him right now as strictly a run stuffer. But if he can maybe recapture either through coaching or whatever else, some of that form from 2020, maybe there's a little bit more in that he's like the one guy you keep in when you're in those in-between downs where they could run or they could pass. It's nickel, but you want to have a big nickel in there. I think there's a possibility for that. Will Anderson has like 20. Has he gained 20 pounds? If he's at 265 now, then he hasn't gained 20 pounds. I think that he is... unless was he 245 by the end of last season? I remember he said when he came in last year he was in the 260s, and I think he lost a little bit. But he's got a frame as a guy that was more of a linebacker that became more of a defensive end when he was in college. He's never really trained like a Nick Bosa has trained. So where Nick Bosa is spending his entire life from the time he's in high school thinking about being a hand-in-the-dirt defensive end, that his physique looks like that, but I think Bosa's probably got kind of the same frame and is the same body weight, but he's a more muscled up 265 than Will Anderson was at whatever weight he finished at last year. So yeah, that's one thing I thought from the very beginning with Will Anderson, that after 2 or 3 years in the NFL, where he figures out what body weight's best for him, and as he starts to train and eat more like a defensive end with his hand in the dirt, that he could carry another 10 or 15 pounds than what he did in high school or what he did in college. So I feel good about that. Was he 246 by the end? We'll have to check that. We'll have to check that. Thank you though. You're not usually wrong about this stuff, Colby. Casario got Autry, Settle, and Fatukasi for the same price as Armstead. That's a lot of depth versus Armstead, who could be one knee injury away from missing a half season again. Yeah, this is not revisionist thinking. This is how I thought at the time. I was a little bit nervous about Eric Armstead because of his injury history and his age, that you're putting a guy out there that you'd be depending on pretty heavily to be that guy that can be a 3-down player, and I'm not sure you can rely on him the entire season. Now, the advantage you have is that when an offense is out there in a hurry-up situation or going no huddle, there's times where you just want to be sure you've got Eric Armstead out there. So, yeah, they can platoon these guys and use them situationally. In an ideal world, you got guys that can do it all, and you got as many 3-down guys out there as possible. It makes it a little bit different or more difficult with game flow sometimes to keep track of 5 or 6 different defensive tackles. I'll try one more time. Let me try one more time. No, 12 gigabytes. That's not the file I need. Not the file I need. All right. Hey, thanks, everybody. This is going to be a short one today. There's very little news out there, so there's not a whole lot to talk about, and I don't want to fill it up with filler and junk after I already wasted 5 minutes of your time trying to download a video. One more thing. Let's see. The A to Z channel did a breakdown of Will's season. He does a good breakdown on players. Yeah, I started to watch that earlier today. Let's see. It will be interesting. By the way, you know who else did a video on Will Anderson? Seth Payne, a couple days ago. And I think A to Z felt the same way about Will that I did. Just to put it very basically, he's still very raw in a lot of respects. So the upside with Will is still very, very big, which you would expect. I think the expectation for Will is that he can become a guy who's 15 plus sacks consistently. Last year, he didn't start playing that way until I'd say midway through the season or so, when he started to get a little bit more comfortable with how they were asking him to be used. And then he's learned a lot already from Danielle Hunter and Von Miller and all these other guys this offseason. All right, thanks, everybody. There's an awkward